I'm curious about what we're going to learn from week 2, because I think there's some interesting matchups and a lot of storylines that provide opportunities for us to learn a lot from week 2. And I want us to kind of get aligned here. And the biggest thing that I think we're going to learn from week 2, or potentially the biggest thing we could learn from week 2, is in the biggest game of the week, we got Texas going to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We're going to be there. And here's my question. What happens if Texas doesn't have the fastball? And the fastball, we all understand, is the vertical attack with Xavier Worthy, with Adonai Mitchell, with Jatavian Sanders, probably running a seam somewhere. What happens if that isn't the edge for them in this upcoming game like it was last year? Forget the Rice game for a second. I'm not overly concerned about that. What if they don't have the deep ball in this game? Or they don't have the passing attack how they want to in this game, as the edge they perceived it to be? Well, then they have to probably start running the ball, right? They have to be a little bit more of a team that can force Alabama to commit numbers to the box. And now that's one thing doing it a season ago with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, but you've got a lot of new cats running the football now for Texas. How does that look? The reason why I'm curious to learn this, for Texas, if they want to go be a college football playoff team, they want to compete for a Big 12 title, there's going to be some point in time where they have to win without the fastball. So if you can win without the fastball in Tuscaloosa, if you can pull it off in Bryant-Denny Stadium with the eyes of the country on you, with that whole place packed out, that would make me feel a lot more confident about what Texas can be the rest of the way. Heck, I would imagine it makes them feel a lot more confident internally about what they can accomplish. Getting a win, period, in Tuscaloosa would be a huge confidence booster. How it looks, I think there's something to be learned. So that'll be a lot of fun to watch. How about Coach Prime and company? What are they going to do for an encore? Because you rolled into Fort Worth, Texas, you're 20-point dogs, so much hype, so much pressure, but even so, there wasn't huge expectations for Coach Prime and company. The over-under win total was like 3.5. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going to be a really good team the rest of the way. What I'm saying is, at first, you have this impression from Deion Sanders from what he did in that TCU game, and once is extremely impressive. I do not want to take anything away from that. They made a statement in Fort Worth. But you do it again at home against a team like Nebraska, who's kind of wounded and limping, and they're coming to Boulder to try and, muster all their strength in a rivalry kind of game with a new head coach. Like, if you do it a second time, now that people are expecting more from you, now that Vegas is favoring you, you start to build in identity. And I think a big part of this is how they managed Travis Hunter in week 2 after he played 100 snaps. We'll talk more about him a little bit later in this live show as well. I'm just curious how they do it now with the perspective and the lenses around Colorado changing. Because everybody's talking about Colorado. Everyone's talking about Deion Sanders. Everyone's talking about Shedeur Sanders. And that's great. That's what you love. You welcome it if you're in Boulder, Colorado. But now, no longer being the underdog, that chip on your shoulder maybe is a little bit smaller. You would imagine it wouldn't be unreasonable if it became smaller. Curious to see how they look in this game against Nebraska. We already told you we pick them to win, but I'm curious to see how they look with the perspective changing around them. We've talked a lot about Notre Dame this show. This is going to be the first time for them where they get real resistance. NC State, that Dave Duran coached football team, strongly believe they're going to have a defense that brings it, to be real. I mean, Peyton Wilson, like I said, the best defensive player they've had to play so far. We have a definition of Notre Dame in our minds, and that's Sam Hartman, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's elevated that wide receiver play. They've got a really strong run game. Well, that's all great to have that definition when you play Navy and Tennessee State. What happens when you play a Power 5 team on the road, kind of a sleepy noon kick? What does that look like? When they feel real resistance, what do they look like? What's the quote? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I'd love to see Notre Dame get punched in the mouth. I think they're going to win that football game. I think they still get it done. But I would think we learn a lot about Notre Dame based on how that game plays out. Now, if they walk out there and just blow the brakes off NC State and they score 40 and Sam Hartman goes for 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, well, then we learn something there too. We learn that they're more than ready to play Ohio State. So I'm excited to watch that one and excited for us to see what we learn there. Whose offense is it anyways? Right? We love that show. We've seen that show a few times. Whose offense is it anyways? Well, we'll see the real thing this upcoming Saturday when Texas A&M goes to Miami. It's great for you to score over 50 points against New Mexico. That's great to hand someone the keys for a test drive on a straight road. What happens, though, when you got to take it off-roading, when it becomes a little more treacherous, when you got to go on the highway, when the stakes get a little bit higher? Of course, I'm talking about the offense here. Jimbo Fisher is known for being an offensive guy. That's how he's made his name in the college football world. Now, though, with the way things went last year and the lack of success, whether he did it on his own or whether he was encouraged to hire an offensive coordinator, Bobby Petrino is calling the plays for A&M. Is he really, though? Like, is it really Bobby Petrino's offense? I think we find out this weekend, and I think we find out as soon as something goes amiss. Like, if you get 2 3-and-outs for Texas A&M, I am going to be fascinated to watch how that team responds. Fascinated to see how Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher are responding. And I think we'll be able to tell pretty quickly. I think we'll be able to tell how the offense looks. Does it look like it looked last year? Are we lining up in the same kind of operation we did last year? Do we see a lot of the things that we saw last year? Or is it, no, we're sticking with this power spread kind of approach? Bobby Petrino is our OC. We're going to let him cook. Like, let's go. Curious to see. I think we find out this weekend because they go on the road and play a real opponent in Miami. Now, this is the one that I'm most curious to find out about, and this is the one that I think could be the biggest learning point and maybe the most impactful learning point. Where's the Ohio State quarterback battle at? Is that thing decided? Is it? Because Kyle McCord pretty much played the entirety of the game against Indiana. I say pretty much. I know he didn't play every single snap, but he played the majority. And there was a discussion going into that game that, hey, both guys are going to play. We're going to give Devin Brown a fair amount of snaps. Like, they're going to kind of split reps, was the way that we all perceived it to be going into that game against Indiana. And then for Kyle McCord to play the duration of the game, for the most part, it's like, okay, you're saying one thing, and I'm seeing another. And if we don't see Devin Brown against Youngstown State, when are we going to see him? If we don't see him get meaningful snaps. Now, Ryan Day has already said he wants Devin Brown to play more than he did last week. I need to see it. I need to see it to believe it. Because if you're not going to play Devin Brown against Youngstown State, I mean, okay, then we kind of have our answer there, right? You can tell me you want to get him more snaps as much as you want, but if he's not playing, then how much do you really want to play him, right? So I think a lot of that, too, is the timing of when he plays. Like, if we see Devin Brown just get the fourth quarter, you and I could probably just get the fourth quarter for Ohio State against Youngstown State, to be honest with you. If we see him in the first half, that's the thing I really want to look at. Now, Ryan Day, I think, is being completely fair when he says that he wants these guys to get into a rhythm, and it's hard to, pull a guy when you feel like one guy is getting into a rhythm. So I understand it's a difficult balance to strike, but if you really want to find out who your quarterback is, this is the game and next game against Western Kentucky to really do that before Notre Dame. Because when it comes to that game against Notre Dame, man, like that's the spot. That's the situation where it's like we got a quarterback and we're rolling with you the rest of the way. There's no more calibration, no more who's our guy. Like, it's either 6 or 33. That's what we need to know. So very, very curious to see how decided it is when it comes to this weekend. I'll say this too. I kind of felt like a 16-year-old with a very rich father on Christmas watching Ohio State play last weekend. Where's my Ferrari? Where's my Ferrari at? I didn't see that against Indiana. I didn't see an offense that was scoring 40, 50 plus. Like, I saw a team go out there, score 23. It was on the road. It was against a Big Ten team. I understand all of that. I understand it was his first time being the guy for Ohio State. But even so, though, we understand they should have scored more than 23 points against Indiana, right? I understand it's week 1. Still should have seen more of an output there. Curious to watch how this whole thing plays out. And curious to see how it plays out post-Notre Dame, too. Like, if they struggle against Notre Dame, do we see this thing go into October? We see this thing go a little bit later in the season. I don't know. 2 really good options, but I'm just fascinated to watch how that thing plays out. So a lot of things to be learned in week 2, a lot of questions we're going to get answers to. I can't wait to watch it. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.